The champagne glass shattered against the hardwood floor of Maggiano's private dining room, and in that crystalline moment, as 24 pairs of eyes turned toward me, my mother's words still hung in the air like poison gas. "We wish you were never born." I was 22 years old. I'd just graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University. And I was about to make a decision that would either destroy my family forever or finally set me free. But before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand how we got here. Because this wasn't just about one terrible dinner. This was about 22 years of being the daughter they never wanted. If you've ever felt like you had to earn love that should have been freely given, if you've ever wondered why you weren't enough, stay with me. This story is for you. And when you're ready, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because I read every single one. My name is Emma, and if you'd looked at my family from the outside, we were the American dream wrapped in a Christmas card. Dad was a partner at a prestigious law firm in downtown Chicago. Mom was a real estate developer. My older sister, Victoria, was climbing the corporate ladder at Goldman Sachs in New York. We lived in a restored Victorian mansion in Evanston that had been featured in Architectural Digest. We were the family that other families envied. Except I was the crack in the foundation. I was 7 years old when I first understood I was different. It was Victoria's high school graduation, and our house was filled with extended family friends, even my dad's senior partners. Everyone was celebrating Victoria, giving her gifts, taking photos. I tugged on my mom's sleeve. "Mom, when I graduate, will we have a big party too?" She looked down at me, and for just a second, her face went blank. Not angry, not sad. Just empty. Then she smiled that client smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Now go play upstairs." I started to walk away, but I heard what she whispered to my aunt. "That one is so needy." Victoria never required this much attention. I was 7 years old, and I learned that wanting my mother's love made me needy. Over the years, I collected these moments. Each one a small piece of evidence that I wasn't quite right, wasn't quite enough, wasn't quite wanted. When Victoria got into Yale, they threw a garden party with 100 guests and a live jazz band. When I got into Northwestern with a full academic scholarship, Mom said, "Well, at least you won't have to go far," like I'd somehow failed by staying close to home. When Victoria landed her job at Goldman Sachs, Dad actually cried with pride at dinner. When I won the university's highest award for undergraduate research, he said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from his phone. Every achievement wasn't a victory. It was proof I still wasn't enough. The comparisons were constant. Victoria never questioned us like this. "Victoria was already interning at your age. Why can't you be more graceful like your sister?" But here's what they didn't understand about being the unwanted daughter. You either crumble into nothing, or you forge yourself into steel. I chose steel. I threw myself into my studies not to win their love. I'd abandoned that fantasy by age 12, but to build my escape route. Every A, every scholarship, every publication was another step toward freedom. By my senior year, I had a 3.98 GPA and acceptance letters to PhD programs at Stanford, Berkeley, and Columbia. All fully funded. I was getting out. Finally. My graduation was on a Friday in mid-June, one of those perfect Midwestern summer days where Lake Michigan sparkles like it's been dusted with diamonds. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I walked across that stage in my purple gown and felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Not in my family, but in myself. After the ceremony, we all met at Maggiano's in River North. Dad had reserved their nicest private dining room. White roses everywhere. An elaborate Italian feast. A 3-tier graduation cake. From the outside, it looked like a celebration. For the first hour, it almost felt normal. People made small talk. Victoria gave a toast about family legacy. That made me feel like a footnote. Mom smiled for photos, her arm around my shoulders, both of us equally stiff. I should have known the facade wouldn't last. The shift happened when my grandmother asked me what my next steps were. "I'm moving to California," I said. "I've accepted a position in Stanford's PhD program. Full funding, plus a research assistantship. I'll be studying family trauma and intergenerational patterns." The room went silent. "California?" Mom's voice could have frozen the sun. "You never discussed this with us." "I'm 22, Mom. I don't need permission. Don't take that tone with me. We're your parents. You should have consulted us." "Consulted you about my own life?" Dad cleared his throat, his lawyer voice emerging. "Emma, we're just surprised. We assumed you'd stay local. You have connections here." "I don't want connections handed to me. I want to earn my own opportunities." Victoria laughed. actually laughed. Emma, don't be naive. Mom and Dad have spent years building relationships that could help you. Help me become someone I'm not. Stay in a city where I'm suffocating. You're being dramatic, Mom said, her grip tightening on her wine glass. Stanford is 3,000 miles away. That's the point. The words were out before I could stop them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Excuse me. Mom's voice was dangerously quiet. I need space. I need to build my own life away from this. Away from your family? Dad asked. Away from the people who raised you? I'm grateful for what you provided. But that doesn't mean I owe you my entire future. Victoria leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. Emma, you're being incredibly selfish. You've always been like this. Always pushing back, always making everything difficult. Something inside me cracked. Making things difficult? I got a full scholarship. I graduated with highest honors. I'm published. How is any of that difficult? It's your attitude, Mom said coldly. You've always had this chip on your shoulder, this constant need for validation. Victoria never needed constant reassurance. But you? Everything is a battle. The room was silent. My grandmother looked stricken. People stared at their plates. A chip on my shoulder? My voice came out strangled. You think I have a chip on my shoulder because I notice when you treat Victoria like she walks on water and treat me like an inconvenience? Emma, that's enough, Dad commanded. But I was done being silenced. No, it's not enough. It's never been enough, has it? Nothing I do is ever enough. Victoria gets into Yale, you throw a party for 100 people. I get a full ride, you barely acknowledge it. Victoria gets engaged, you plan a $50,000 wedding. When I made Dean's List every single semester, you forgot to even say congratulations. We say congratulations, Mom protested weakly. You say the words, but you don't mean them. You've never meant them. Mom's face flushed red. You want to talk about what I mean? Fine. Let's talk about it. You've always been difficult, Emma. From the moment you were born. You cried constantly as a baby. You questioned everything as a child. You've never just fit. Victoria fit. She understood what was expected. But you. She paused, and I saw something awful in her eyes. You were unplanned, she continued, her voice shaking. I was 42. My career was thriving. We had Victoria, and she was perfect. We had our family complete. And then you happened. I waited for someone to stop her. No one did. And I tried, Emma. God knows I tried. But you were never easy. You were never what we expected. And there were times, many times over the years, when we wished we'd made a different choice. When we wished you were never born. That's when I knocked over my champagne glass. The crash echoed in the sudden silence. Expensive champagne spread across the white tablecloth like spilled blood, dripping onto my mother's designer dress. Everyone froze. I stood up slowly. Thank you, I said, my voice eerily calm despite the tears burning behind my eyes. Thank you for finally saying it out loud. For 22 years I felt it. But I told myself I was being too sensitive. That maybe if I just tried harder, you'd finally see me. Emma, sit down, Dad said. No. I'm done sitting down. I'm done being quiet. I'm done pretending this is a normal family. I looked around the table at the shocked faces. You want to know what nobody expected? I grabbed my purse. I'm going to Stanford. I'm going to build an incredible career. I'm going to help people who grew up like me, feeling unwanted. And I'm going to do it without you. Without any of you. You don't mean that, Victoria said. I absolutely mean that. I'm done trying to earn love that was never going to be given. I'm done shrinking myself to make you comfortable. I'm done. And I walked out. I walked out into the Chicago summer evening. My phone started buzzing immediately. Victoria. You embarrassed the entire family. You need to apologize. Dad. This behavior is unacceptable. Call me. Nothing from Mom. Not a single word. I took the L train back to my tiny studio apartment in Rogers Park and sat on the floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes. That night I cried. Not because I regretted what I'd said, but because I was grieving. Grieving the mother I'd always wanted but never had. Grieving the childhood I'd deserved but been denied. The next morning, something unexpected happened. I woke up and felt light, like I'd been carrying a boulder my entire life, and finally set it down. I called my grandmother. Mimi, I said. Tell me the truth. Did you know? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I suspected. Your mother has never been maternal. But with you. She sighed. I think you reminded her of parts of herself she didn't like. You were independent, questioning, strong-willed. When you weren't soft and compliant, she couldn't cope. Why didn't you say anything? Because I'm a coward, she said simply. And honey, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We talked for 2 hours. She told me things I'd never known. How my mom had cried for days when she found out she was pregnant with me. How my dad had convinced her to go through with it, saying 2 children was better for their image. I was a prop in their perfect life. Nothing more. Over the next 2 weeks, I finished packing. I sold most of my belongings. My phone kept buzzing with calls and voicemails from Victoria and Dad, alternating between demanding I apologize and threatening to cut me off, which was laughable since they'd never supported me financially anyway. Still nothing from Mom. 3 days before I was supposed to leave, my doorbell rang at 10 p.m. It was Victoria. She looked different. Smaller. Her perfect hair was in a messy ponytail, no makeup. Can I come in? We sat on my floor, drinking cheap wine from mugs because I'd already packed my glasses. I'm sorry, she said finally. For everything. For all the years of comparing, of judging. You were right about all of it. Did you know? I asked. Did you know they wished I was never born? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not explicitly. But I heard things. And I never said anything because it was easier not to. Because I was the golden child, and saying something would have risked that. So you let me suffer to protect yourself. Yes. And I hate myself for it. We sat in silence. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. Not yet. I don't expect you to. I just needed you to know that I see it now. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. Go to Stanford, she whispered. Build your life. Be happy. And maybe someday we can try again. As actual sisters. If this story is resonating with you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me your thoughts, because this community is built on people who understand what it means to fight for yourself. Let's keep going. I left for Stanford on a Tuesday morning in August. I loaded everything I owned into my 12-year-old Honda Civic and drove out of Chicago as the sun rose over Lake Michigan. I didn't call my parents to say goodbye. Somewhere in Nevada, I pulled over at a rest stop and screamed at the desert sky until my throat was raw. It felt amazing. Stanford was everything I'd hoped for. The campus was beautiful, but more than that, it felt like a place where I could finally breathe. Where I was just Emma, not Victoria's sister, or the difficult daughter. My advisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, became the mentor I'd never had. She pushed me intellectually, but also saw me as a person. You're going to do important work, she told me during our first meeting. But first, you need to heal. You can't help others if you haven't helped yourself. So that's what I did. I found a therapist. I joined a support group for adults estranged from their families. I started my research on maternal rejection and its long-term impacts. I interviewed dozens of adults who'd grown up feeling unwanted by their mothers. Their stories validated my experience in ways I'd never expected. I wasn't alone. There were so many of us. My research got attention. I published papers. I gave talks. By my 3rd year, I was becoming known in my field. But here's what nobody expected, including me. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because it mattered. Because these stories needed to be told. Because children who felt unwanted needed to know they weren't broken. My grandmother visited me twice a year. Victoria and I texted occasionally, surface level at first, then gradually deeper. She was in therapy too, working through her own guilt. I didn't speak to my parents for 3 years. Not a single word. And then, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night in my 4th year, my phone rang. Victoria was crying. Dad had a heart attack. He's in the ICU. Emma, I know you don't owe them anything, but he might die. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes after she hung up. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To let him face mortality without me, the way I'd faced my entire childhood without them. But another part of me, the part that had spent 4 years healing, knew something else. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. About whether I could live with my choices. I hovered over my mom's contact. One call could undo everything I'd built. One call could pull me back into their orbit. I didn't call. Instead, I booked a flight to Chicago. The hospital was Northwestern Memorial, where my dad's colleagues worked. My mother was in the waiting room when I arrived. She looked older, smaller. Gray roots in her perfect hair. She looked up when I walked in. Emma, she said. Mom. We sat in silence for several minutes. He asked for you, Mom said quietly. When he woke up after surgery. That's why I'm here. More silence. I was wrong, she said suddenly, not looking at me. About so many things. About you. I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy. I convinced myself that you were difficult because it was easier than admitting I was a bad mother. That I didn't know how to love a daughter who wasn't like me, who didn't want what I wanted. She wiped her eyes, her perfect makeup smearing. When you left that dinner, I was furious. But then over time, I started to see things differently. All the ways I'd failed you. All the times I could have chosen love and chose criticism instead. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I don't want to die with you hating me. And I don't want your father to die without you knowing that we're sorry. For telling you we wished you were never born. For treating you like you were less than Victoria. For every cold word, every time we made you feel unwanted. You deserved better. I felt tears streaming down my face. I needed to hear that when I was 7, I said. When I was 12. When I was 17. I needed to hear that I mattered. I know, she whispered. And I can't give you those years back. But I want you to know that I see it now. And I'm sorry. We sat in that waiting room for hours talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time ever. She told me about her own childhood, her own critical mother. How she'd learned to equate love with perfection. It didn't excuse anything. But it helped me understand. My father survived. When I visited his hospital room, he cried. I'm proud of you, he said. I know I never said it. But I'm proud of the woman you've become. You're proud now, I said. But you weren't proud when I needed you to be. I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to know. Today, I'm Dr. Emma Harrison. I finished my PhD, and now I'm an assistant professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. I run a research lab, focused on family trauma and recovery. I've published a book. But more than that, I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. My relationship with my parents is complicated. We talk once a month. We've had family therapy. They've apologized repeatedly. We'll never have a normal relationship. Too much damage was done. But we have something. Honesty, maybe. Victoria and I are closer than we've ever been. She left Goldman Sachs and went back to school to become a therapist. Turns out being the golden child is its own kind of trauma, she told me. My grandmother died 2 years ago peacefully. At her funeral, I read a letter she'd written me, telling me how proud she was, how much she wished she'd been braver. Here's what nobody expected. I didn't do what I did out of revenge. I did it to save myself. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself. To say, I deserve better. And actually believe it. My students ask me sometimes how I can be so passionate about family therapy when my own family was so broken. I tell them it's because of that, not in spite of it. I know what it feels like to be unwanted. I know what it takes to survive it. And I know that healing is possible. The little girl who tugged on her mother's dress, asking if people would celebrate her too, she's still inside me. But now I'm the one celebrating her. I'm the one telling her she's enough. And that, more than any apology, is what set me free. If you're watching this and you've ever felt unwanted, ever felt like you weren't enough, then this story is for you. It's not you. It was never you. You are inherently worthy of love, just as you are. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and build your own life. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe if you want more stories about resilience and transformation. And drop a comment telling me your story, because I read every single one. You are not alone. Remember, you were always enough.